Now what Brandon's talking about is the next step, which is selection of security controls. Selection of the security controls, it's founded on the security categorization, meaning once you figure out whether you have a low impact system like the web server I just talked about, or the troop movement system, a high impact system, like if that system went down, people might die. That tells you what controls to choose from in the NIST 853 group of controls, right? That's step one. Now when you're tailoring those out to get to your question, Brandon, there's a couple things. Number one is the environment. The environment is going to be very different from, for example, I was working at Verizon. They have a cybersecurity risk program. And we had some clients, without telling anything about any clients I worked with, obviously, but we had some clients who had wireless and some clients who didn't have wireless, but they had remote access. And then some clients that didn't have any one of those things. Each of those have a different environment, so the controls are going to be tailored differently. For the example, somebody with wireless, obviously we'd have to tailor in the wireless controls, which would be AC, I don't know if it's AC 17, I can't remember which one it is, but the AC controls that are dealing with wireless, those would pertain to that system, right? But obviously if you had a system that didn't have the wireless in there, that's out. So that's number one, is in the environment of the system. What kinds of things are in the environment? Do you have multiple sites? If you have multiple sites, some of the controls that you might have to use would be things like disaster recovery. Do you have an alternate site? Because if you have a system that's in, say, California on the fault line and you have an earthquake, like here, I'm in the Philippines right now, they had a 7.3 earthquake in Manila. If you had a system that was right on the fault line of the 7.3 and it took out that building, boom, well, you have to have an alternate site. So those controls would apply to that, and as opposed to a system that didn't have any of those things. It wasn't in a disaster zone. Not going to be any cataclysmic events or anything. They might not have alternate sites. So environment is an important one. So number one, we talked about categorization. That's key because we need to know what level the system is. Number two, environment. Another thing is technology, and a lot of people don't talk about this one, but the technology used is important. Specific example of this, a technology solution would be whether the organization is using multi-factor authentication versus username password. Two different things. But if you have multi-factor authentication with, say, biometrics, you have different controls that have to be implemented, different enhancements of controls. So it's number one, the tailoring the controls, knowing which controls to use, of course, is security categorization, which you already know, Brandon. The other one would be environment. Where is the system located? Are there any kind of flood zones, or is there anything that we should know? And then the network environment, like what technologies do we need? Do we have wireless? Do we have remote? Those are different controls that are also going to have to be tailored in or tailored out depending on the situation of the network environment.